following program contains video game spoilers, scenes of violence, and possibly some coarse language. Viewer discretion is advised. Space Quest I, The Sarian Encounter, was one of the very first computer games I ever played. It was created by Sierra back in 1986, despite the on-screen currently saying 1987. It used the onboard PC speaker to beep a catchy tune or make various sound effects. What stood out on this game for me was the interaction between the gamers and the game itself. It wasn't just a game that you typed, "Go East," and the game would say, "Okay, you go east." This game had you controlling your hero, which in the first two incarnations you could name yourself. This didn't last though. Inevitably our hero simply became attached to the default name Roger Wilco. By Space Quest III, Roger was his name unconditionally. Getting back on track, this game holds a high place in my gaming life. When I was 6 years old, I begged my father for help because I could not figure out how to open a box that in the game, that I would learn later on, was actually a trunk, and that the game would accept no other designations for it, leaving you lost and confused if you couldn't figure out exactly what word to use. Try being 6 years old and attempting to figure out multiple words for the name box. The series went on to span multiple sequels, such as Space Quest II Vohal's Revenge, Space Quest III The Pirates of Pestilon, Space Quest IV Roger Wilco and the Time Rippers, Space Quest V The Next Mutation, and Space Quest VI Roger Wilco and the Spinal Frontier. When Space Quest V and VI came along, they started going with more of a Star Trek kind of theme for their names. Sadly, our galactic janitorial hero is on shore leave for an undetermined amount of time. Sierra has no intentions of making Space Quest VII as of this video. Now on to something a little different. How many of you recognize this? I'm sure most of you do. Dastan from the infamous Prince of Persia movie released just this year in 2010. But where did this story begin? Yes, we're going all the way back to 1991, to the PC release. Bear in mind that when I played this game, I was very young. I'm talking 9 or 10 years old, wandering into a video game about a man thrown in prison with death traps at every turn to save his princess. Prince of Persia holds its own special place in my gaming history, only not as groundbreaking or anything that amazed me unquestionably. The game was a serious challenge, but as I moved through it, I got a lot better at it. My biggest trouble lay with the game's traps themselves. Being a young, easily frightened boy, there was one trap in this game I just couldn't bear to face. We called these chompers, although to this day I don't know if that was their official title. Regardless, this specific death trap was a gory slaughterfest for any young gamer, and in my case, well, it was enough to send me running out of the room and begging my older sister to push the jump button to get through them. She was nice enough to do it, and I even managed to finish the entire game as a result. Over the years, I got over my squeamish attitude towards video games, but those chompers will forever haunt me as one of the scariest moments in gaming for me. Let me tell you, beyond that, there really hasn't been much that's scared me. I can only think of one other game that's actually scared me. More on that a bit later. So far, we've covered 2 video game styles that have played a major role in my personal gaming history. We've covered adventure games such as Space Quest and any Quest-based series that has spin off since then. We've also covered action games such as Prince of Persia, which kind of covered platforming, horror, and combat all in one game. But there's one other significant series that stands out in this generation that must be brought to light. I'm sure many of you recognize this scene.
You failed, Your Highness. I am a Jedi. like my father before me.
Mark Hamill, better known as Luke Skywalker. How many of you know one of his other major roles? One that he did in video gaming.
Captain Eisen, I'm not going to tell you how to run your ship, but I am going to insist that Hobbs is reinstated to the flight roster immediately.
Well, that's admirable, Colonel, but who...
I will, sir. I'll fly with him. He's the best wingman I've ever had.
While this scene doesn't tie directly into the first game of the series, it's a strong hint as to which series in question it actually is. Before I played this series, I played Buck Rogers, and had no story or obvious plot. Wing Commander was the first game to seriously grip me in terms of story. It was a fascinating story. Spaceships, an ongoing war with the Kilrathi, all the characters had unique stories and backgrounds, dreams of flying and conquest for a little boy to relish. The gameplay in Wing Commander was both ruthless and intense. The game only got better as it went on, unlike many other series. Wing Commander's strength lasted all the way to its 5th installment, with multiple side mission expansion packs and a famous mercenary spin-off series called Wing Commander Privateer. It also spawned a multitude of other intense space-based games, which I'll cover later on in the series, most not created by Origin, but still pay homage to it regardless. Wing Commander definitely holds its own as one of the pinnacles in my gaming history. It introduced me to cockpit-based combat, and in more than one occasion I've played games that involved cockpit battles. More on those a little bit later.
Your shuttle is waiting. Yes, sir.
So, there you have it. 3 of the very first video games I ever played that shaped the gamer I've become. Next time on Triad, we'll move into the console generations and talk about some of the console games I played as a young boy. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the next episode of Triad, Tales of a Gamer.